movement where we're bringing our arms up over our head and talking about what is really required to get your arms up over your head in a safe manner. And typically down dog is the movement where people are going to have the hardest time and complain of shoulder problems, wrist problems, etc. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to bring in two models to show you full range of motion, or what the orthopedic profile should look like for nice load transfer through the joints. And then I'm going to bring somebody in who's a little tighter, who requires a little bit more mobilization. There's stuck joints, what have you, so you can see the difference. And all of us as instructors have seen the difference, and we know that not everybody will fit this orthopedic profile or such, but it's how you can adjust somebody in class. And again, this is to allow them to do their own yoga class based off of their body, not how we're taught to do the poses in and of itself. So Alex, come on up here. All right. So first we're just gonna, she's gonna get into down dog first. So we can look at what is called reference lines, okay? So when I'm looking at somebody, when they're in down dog position, I'm looking at a wrist shoulder reference line, a shoulder hip reference line, a hip to knee, then to ankle reference line is what I'm looking for, okay? Very rare will I actually try to get somebody with shoulder width apart, okay? So Alex, I'm gonna have you turn your down dog to face the camera so they can see your hands, okay? Now typically down dog is always taught with shoulders width apart, hands planted into the floor and such. Now, we have to be careful what we think shoulders width apart is. Bring your hands a smidgen closer. There you go. A lot of people think this is shoulders width apart, okay? This is actually a pure overhead position, and we're not moving in what's called the scapular plane. The scapular plane is a very important plane to work within for the shoulder. As for most people, there's a lot more range of motion. Okay, so go ahead and take your hand back to your position. There you go. Now, she could actually go a smidgen wider. There you go, which will provide a lot more space, okay? So, of course, we don't want the shoulders shrugging up to the ears. We don't really want the head hanging down, because that is also a common cue. This is a work position type pose. So what we're in, basically, down dog is a work-based pose. The reason is she has to support herself and muscles have to be on. And essentially, if we were in a weight room situation, she would actually be doing an overhead press with her body weight. And how many of us are able to do an overhead press with our own body weight? But in a yoga class, we're asking a lot of people who've never lifted, hardly have ever moved their body around, to try to get into this position, okay? So I'm gonna have you get out and then have Jackie come in, okay? Knock it over. Okay, so go ahead and get down dog. Okay. Jackie's a little tighter. And so we have to ask ourselves, is Jackie tight muscularly in the muscles from joint to joint? Or is Jackie tight in the joint in and of itself? Okay, so if we sit here and stretch and stretch and stretch, and I've worked with Jackie for a while now, and I know stretching does nothing, okay? It does not create mobility in the joint in and of itself. It'll create more range of motion, but from joint to joint, and I know for some people that's just not gonna make sense, but she will never get out of this position, okay, as long as I keep stretching everything. I have to actually get to the source, okay? Now, Jackie already knows that she's got to take a wider hand position, so I'm going to have her bring it in a little bit closer, which would be shoulders width apart if she was going into another person's class, okay? And now it changed, okay? So her her wrist shoulder line is not as ideal, okay? And her shoulder hip line is not as ideal because we've got too much of a curve going right here, okay? Some of that because of the hamstrings, but I also know she has a mobility issue in her hip, and that's why I also chose her to do this. But her hip, knee, ankle lines is relatively fine, okay? So in a classroom situation, go ahead and face the class with that close, face the class, the camera, okay? Now in a classroom situation, I would never make her do this, because what's actually gonna get her is we're traumatizing the shoulder, the passive structures in the shoulder, and we're also making the hands take on a far bigger load than they have to take on, okay? So we're gonna move into the scapular plane. Take your hands a little bit wider, okay? So for Jackie, it wouldn't even actually be taking her pinkies to the outer edges of the mat. She would actually have to come off the mat. Half her finger, or like 2 of her fingers would have to come off, and the rest of her hands, okay? And some people don't want to do that. It's like they're gonna fall off their mat in the yoga class for some reason. I don't know why. Now, her hand also takes another brunt, okay? Her wrist, because taking this flat position and digging into the ground aggravates lots of things in the wrist. She's the last person I want to do that. She's somebody where I want all her fingers to come together and cup, okay? So a lot of people who will have this issue are massage therapists, and Alex is in the making, okay? People who work on their computer a lot, okay? And people who have these stuck joints that don't know how to get out of it into a yoga class, because as instructors, we are very, very convincing that it has to be done a particular way, and the person feels as though they can't get into that position that feels right for them. Or the instructor sees her hands like this and has just been conditioned, hands are flat, okay? And it's not about strengthening the wrist. Some people just have sensitive wrists. That's just all there is to it. We want to make sure we understand the person getting into the pose, okay? So, I'm going to have you stand up, Jackie, okay? So, if I'm going to work with Jackie one-on-one, so that's what I would do in a classroom situation, because I cannot do a full-blown assessment on her, but I can certainly see what the heck is going on, okay? So I'm going to have you turn to the side, okay? So what I'm looking for when I work with somebody or when I'm walking around the class is I'm looking for, can she get into 10 to 15 degrees of thoracic extension, okay? Now some of us will see, oh, she's standing real straight. Okay, just kind of get that. We're on video and all of a sudden we're like, I have the most perfect posture ever, okay? And then Christy's right here and I have the most perfect posture ever, okay? So naturally, there's a kyphotic curve in the thoracic spine. That's a very natural thing. We just want to make sure that each vertebrae is mobile, okay? So what I'm going to ask her to do, so right here is the sternal notch, okay? That's right where my necklace is at, okay? We all have that. We can all put our finger there, okay? So what I'm going to ask Jackie to do is, can she lift my finger up towards the ceiling? So go ahead and do that. She did itty-bitty movement. Go ahead and relax a second so they can see that, because that one's going to be really hard to see. Go ahead and do it again. Good. Now, that was not 10 to 15 degrees of thoracic extension. That might have been about 5. So that tells me the vertebrae that are that sit right where the shoulder blades do, I have to mobilize. And this one you can do easily enough with tennis balls. But this isn't the only thing to work with, because the thoracic spine is intimate with the shoulder, okay? So what I'm going to have her do is, one first, she's got to relax again, okay? So remember, we got to bring our arms up overhead, okay? Now, go ahead and bring your arms up over your head, okay? Now look how nice she did that from the lumbar spine, okay? So she doesn't know how to integrate thoracic extension with bringing her arms up over her head, because she has stuck vertebrae up here that do not know how to move in the direction of extension, okay? So what I'm going to have her do is bring that tail underneath her a little bit. It's not a tail tuck, she's just got to move that rib cage back a little bit, okay? So now the arms moved forward a little bit because she does not have that 10 to 15 degrees thoracic extension, okay? She tried to couple it, okay? And I'll show you what that looks like coupled. So go ahead and go bring all the way down, okay? So 10 to 15 degrees thoracic extension looks more like this. And then when I bring my arms up overhead, I don't want to smack you. All right, so if I don't do that thoracic extension, my arms are going to get stuck right there, okay? But if I do that 10 to 15 degrees thoracic extension, then my arms will move further back. But notice that I wasn't doing that. So that's always a nice indicator to you in the classroom that that thoracic spine is stuck if they're trying to move from the rib cage. But if they got to pull it back because we haven't mobilized them, I always tell people when they're in Utkatasana, Warrior One, Crescent, anytime we're bringing our arms up over our head, move the arms out or maybe down or bring it at your heart. Otherwise, you're gonna trash the shoulders. You won't feel all these cumulative stresses, but they're gonna develop, okay? So when she brings her arms up over her head, so she's gonna now turn this way because the thoracic spine is intimate with the shoulder. We are looking for this shoulder blade right here. What I'm looking for is 60 degrees of upward rotation when she brings her arms up overhead, and hopefully that's coupled with the 10 to 15 degrees of thoracic extension. Well, I know she doesn't have the 10 to 15 degrees, but we're going to bring our arms up over our head anyway, okay? Bring your pelvis back under, okay? So, when I'm doing this, I'm looking for, again, this is when you're able to do this one-on-one. Okay, we're looking for the inferior angle of the scapula, okay? It's about right there, okay? And it needs to line up with the axilla or your armpit. She's behind. So what that means for somebody, go ahead and bring your arms down. So if she had the 60 degrees of upward scapular rotation with the 10 to 15 degrees of extension, when she's in down dog, or any type where her arms are up over her head, especially down dog though, especially. That means the shoulder, the glenoid, is going to be sitting really nicely. And there's compression in the joint. Compression equals stability here, okay? She's short of that 60 degrees, which means it's sitting more like this. So every time she gets into down dog, she's traumatizing the passive structures in her shoulder, which means over time, she will trash it. And right now, she'll just complain of, oh, there's a lot of extra muscular work because the upper trap has to take the load regardless of how we get her in that position, okay? She just doesn't have the position. And her wrists, okay? So the other thing that we're gonna look for, that we have to look for, is now, you're gonna face it, is 120 degrees of gleno-humeral movement, okay? Now, of course, I'm not going to do it with the arms up over the head because this is also actually an impingement test. So the hand is going to go on the shoulder, okay? And so we're going to, when I guide somebody, is that I have my hand on their shoulder because one, I need to feel if they're going to try to shrug the shoulder, and I help them lift up the elbow. I'm going to have you come at an angle actually. There you go. Okay, so we're just gonna say this is our 0 point, okay? So we're gonna lift up the elbow. She's stuck right there because it's hard to move through and it feels a little heavy, okay? So that's not 120 degrees, okay? So that tells me I have to help her mobilize that joint. We can't do that through stretches, okay? So I'm gonna relax, okay? So 120 degrees, what that looks like is this, okay? Because I'm keeping my hand on the shoulder, okay? So that's something that I'm looking for. Now, obviously in a classroom situation, I cannot mobilize her joints and such. So that's why she'll take that wider position, she'll bend the knees a little bit, shift backwards, or she'll just take the position of tabletop because that's a far more stable position for the shoulder to be in, because as we're going through infant development and childhood development, we're crawling before we're trying to support our body weight with our hands. So it's a very stable position for the shoulder. But the one mobilization that I will teach, because it's something that's really accessible, is tennis balls. So she's going to lay down, okay, on the back. Yes. So we're going to put this right around that bra line, right where those stuck segments are, okay? Basically, what I tell people is from the bottom of the shoulder blade, we're going to move to the top of the shoulder blade. Just bend your knees. Sit up a little bit. Sorry. All right. And lay back. Now, don't lay all the way back. No, hands behind your head. Now, you have to support your head. Have to, okay? Now, what she's going to do is, because we're trying to get her into extension, she's going to keep looking at the front of the room as she goes backwards. So keep looking at the front of the room. What that does is it helps bring the chest up, which means it's the thoracic spine that's moving up. How's that feel? Yes, this is not always pleasant for people. So I can tell that this is all the farther we're going to go, okay? So when she's ready to come up, she'll just come on up. Good. She's going to lift up the hips. No, your hips. She's like, this hurts. All right, your hips. Now you're going to roll down that way. There you go, there you go. Now these vertebrae, itty bitty, you don't have to move huge, okay? But this is not complete, this is obviously not very nice. All right, go ahead and go back. But this is important. It tells you how stuck she is and how much she actually needs to do this. Go ahead and come on up. Good, lift up the hips, roll down. Good, and then do it again. So usually when somebody rolls that big down the tennis balls, I usually make sure they go back down. Because that one wasn't so bad. She's like, oh, yes. Lift up the hips, move that way now. There you go. Hips down. There we go. Now, mobility does as far as your flexibility, that doesn't mean you're not going to have a joint that's stuck or that needs to be mobilized. Okay? And Alex will be one of those examples. Go ahead and go back. And we're just going to see how this changes just doing this. I mean, I need to do a shoulder, but I cannot show you a shoulder mobilization on a YouTube like this because I don't know the laws in your state about doing mobilizations like that. This one is, you can do this with a foam roller. Okay, hips up. Go that way. There you go. You do want to breathe. But notice that she's actually going a little bit further back. So go ahead and come all the way up. Okay, get into down dog. And she has chosen to take a very close stance for down dog. I need her to take her feet further away from her hands. There you go. This way she, oh. Now, I noticed where her thoracic spine was the first time, and this is significantly different, and it will help let go of the shoulder. How's that feel? Good. Feel better? Mm-hmm. She still prefers to cup her hands, but that's also a signal to me that I have to take the band and mobilize her shoulder. But of course, I cannot do that for a video like that. When I get my courses together, for sure I will have that done. Okay, so I'm going to have you hop out of here. Come here, Alex. Okay, so Alex has a lot more range of motion, but that doesn't mean that we can't mobilize her joints. The difference is that with Jackie being relatively tight, that we're going to spend more time doing a mobilization, whereas Alex or for me, it just might take us about 10 seconds to mobilize and we're good to go, okay? So we're just going to stand off to the side, okay? So again, we're going to see, can she do this? Because she's been watching the whole time, so I know she's been practicing in her head, like, I can do this, I can do this. Okay, so go ahead and lift my finger up towards the ceiling. She wants to move a little bit through the pelvis. I don't know if you caught that, but I saw that. Go ahead and relax. There you go. Now go ahead and lift up. Okay. She's doing that with her breath. She's cheating. So she's going to have to hold her breath for a real long time to do that. But that's okay. That tells me what I have to teach her. Okay? So just good. And she's very flexible in yoga, but it doesn't mean she's getting into the positions that are ideal for her. Okay? So think lift up, just the chest up towards the ceiling. There you go. She cheated a smidgen with the head to make it look like she had 10 to 15 degrees. There's, again, when you're working one-on-one, there's lots of things that people will do. Of course, in a classroom situation, we'll see how they're trying to, the body is creating a strategy to move, is what it's doing. And so we want to try to help them from there, not get into a position that's eventually going to hurt them, okay? So that is definitely something that I would want to teach her, but she needs her thoracic spine mobilized as well, actually, okay? Bring your arms up over your head. From the front. Lift the chest. There you go, okay? Now, we're going to turn this to the back, okay? So she's got lots of clothes on, but that's all right. Because it's about feeling. Again, this is when I'm doing it one-on-one, okay? There it is, okay? Now, she sits just shy of the 60 degrees as well, okay? But I also know she fell off of her horse, not once, not twice, lots of times. So the body's going to lock up, okay? Let's go ahead and come on in. Face the camera. So this is the nice thing, having somebody who can get into down dog, but yet will have an issue eventually as well. Okay, we're going to come off to the side. Relax. All right, and then lift. Yeah. She hesitated right here. Okay. Did you feel that hesitation? Yeah. So she's not going to reach 120 degrees either. So what she's doing when she's getting into down dog, she's creating a strategy somewhere else in her body to create that range of motion. And I already know she's hypermobile systemically, and so she's trying to find it somewhere else in a passive structure. And hypermobile people will have far more ligamentous or passive structure injuries than Jackie will. Okay, Jackie is not hypermobile in the joints. So we're going to go through a really quick test with Alex, so you can understand what I mean by hypermobile, and physiologic, okay? So Jackie, I'm going to have you come up here too, okay? I'm just going to stand off to the side, okay? So you're going to hold your hand up like this, okay? You're going to take your pinky and bend it back, okay? There you go. If you hit 90 degrees or more, which is really taking that finger down, give yourself a point, okay? And now go to the other side. Okay. Now, and then of course give yourself, more points isn't better. And release. Now, you're going to drop your hands like this, take your thumb and bring it towards your wrist, okay? If you can do it, give yourself a point. If you can't do it, don't give yourself a point, obviously. So, Alex has 2, you have how many points? You have 2 points, very well. Other side, so you got to do both sides, okay? So now Alex has got 3 points and you have, she still has 2 points, okay? And now I'm just going to have you step forward, okay? So when we check the elbow, this is not double jointed, by the way. I mean, she has a hypermobile joint at the elbows because she's extending past 10 degrees right here. So she gets 2 more points, okay? Because the wrist is falling below, especially this one. This one more than this one. Go ahead and bring your hands down, forward. There you go. Okay, and then Jackie gets a point for this one, but not for this one, okay? Or does she? It's right on the edge. If she wants to take it, she can. 3 points. Hey, she said more's not better. But what is a good number? Okay, now the next one is a hyperextended knee, okay? So we're looking for the joint line to be behind, oh God, I believe it's the femur. She does on both legs. She gets 2 more points. She can keep them locked out and touch her toes. She gets another one, so she has 8 points. I already know that, okay? So we're gonna lock your knees out, okay? And you can also tell by feeling the muscles back here as well. Okay, she gets 1 point, and then, okay, and then she gets another point. What's your score, Jackie? 5. Jackie's actually normal, okay? Yeah, oh, these people need to stretch more, and if I'm doing mobilization techniques on them, I know I have to do their holds a little bit longer than for Jackie or for Alex. Between 4 and 6 is physiologic, that's normal. So again, she's just got normal range of motion. And Alex is she got 8 out of 9, and so between 7 out of 9, that's hypermobility, that's systemically unsound. These people need a lot more strength training. That's why I came up with the strength yoga that I did. Okay, because if somebody's going to get hurt in the passive structures, it's going to be her. Where Jackie might be more of a muscle pull than a ligamentous strain. Okay, so when you're in down dog, or when you're in any of the standing poses where our arms are going up over our head, we want to try to move in the scapular plane if they have that range of motion. And you know what, if they just can't do it, really encourage them to bend their arms. Let their Utkatasana, their warrior one, their crescent, their down dog to some sort of degree be their own, because you have no idea what they're feeling, but when you see that now, you might have a better understanding of what they're feeling. Let their hands go outside of the mat so they can have way more range of motion, a lot more stability, or to create more stability in that down dog position. Again, I'm trying to work one-on-one, we get to do a lot more stuff, and then get them back out into the classroom. And the same thing goes for child's pose. Child's pose, go ahead and get in child's pose real fast, both of you. Okay. Child's pose, you're in flexion, but your arms are going up over your head. Guess what? Elbows are bent, okay? Because she's flexed. She's not flexed so much. There's a little bit more range of motion, so having the arms straight out in front of them is a little bit more comfortable. But anytime that you flex over, your arms can't get up over your head straight. It's only when we get into extension. And gosh, I hope if you had a question, it answered it, but it maybe created more questions. So if you do have a question, just do it in the comment below, or you can message me from my website, lovelandyogacorefitness.com. And thanks for watching. Thanks, girls. Namaste.